Every night at 2:37 a.m., something knocks from apartment 3A Reddit horror story. It all started with a wall. An ordinary, nondescript wall painted off, white and blemished with decades of tenants leaning, hammering, and rearranging furniture on the other side. I never paid attention to it before, not really. When I moved into apartment 3B, it was the wall between my kitchen and the next unit, the wall that my fridge sat against, humming gently. A dead zone. Nothing more. But over time, that wall became the loudest thing in the apartment. It's funny how your life can shift around something so unassuming, how something as solid and supposedly quiet as drywall can end up rearranging your entire sense of safety. At first, it was nothing. A thump, the kind of muffled impact you don't even process until it happens again. And again, a rhythmic sound like someone dropping a heavy book onto the floor from waist height. Always at 2:37 a.m., never a second earlier or later. It was so precise. I began to anticipate it. The moment the digital clock blinked from 2:36 to 2:37, the thump would echo through the wall like an unspoken threat. I didn't tell anyone at first. There was no point. People get weird when you talk about things you hear that they can't. They either start backing away mentally, or they lean in too close with too much interest. The kind of people who collect the pain of others like souvenirs. I wasn't ready to be a story someone else told at dinner parties. So I kept it to myself. I did what any rational person would do. I convinced myself it was pipes. Old buildings like ours groaned under their own weight, and sometimes they hiccuped in ways that sounded almost human. But it didn't feel like plumbing. There was no gurgling, no whining or rattling. Just that solitary, deliberate thump like a fist without a follow-up. And it wasn't just the sound, it was what came after. Silence. Not the normal kind either. Not the sort of urban hush filled with distant cars and the occasional bark. This was a vacuum. After the thump, the building seemed to hold its breath. My ears would ring slightly, like pressure was shifting inside the room. Then, without fail, I'd feel watched. It's a cliché, I know. Everyone says that, but this was different. It was like the shadows lengthened ever so slightly, like the air behind my neck gained density. Not cold, just heavier. The only reason I didn't flee the first week was because nothing ever followed. No one broke in, no one knocked on my door. I wasn't hurt. The world went back to normal by sunrise, and so did I. Mostly. But the feeling lingered, and eventually I started listening for it. The thump became my ritual. I'd lie in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, heart skipping just a bit as 237 crept closer. And like clockwork, it would come. One soft but firm blow, like punctuation. I started noting it in my phone. I even set an alarm at 2:36 to make sure I never missed it. It became a problem I needed to solve. A puzzle, sure, but also a test. If I could figure it out, maybe I'd stop feeling so fragmented. That's the only word I have for it. Like someone had shuffled my pieces and I couldn't find where the corner was anymore. I asked the super about the neighbor. He seemed confused. Nobody lives in 3A, he said, eyebrows scrunching like I'd told a joke he didn't quite get. That unit's sealed. It's been empty since the fire.
That stopped me. What fire?
I asked. He looked uncomfortable. Years ago. Before your time. Small one, but bad enough. Nobody died, but the tenant left in a hurry. Never came back. Legal stuff got weird. So we boarded it up. Should be completely inaccessible. I pressed, but he shut me down. I should have stopped there. A rational person would have, but I couldn't let it go. That thump felt too deliberate, too alive. I started pacing along the shared wall at night, trying to hear something before or after the sound. I put my ear against it. Nothing. Not a creak. Not a breath. Just silence. So I knocked. Once, twice, a soft 3-tap rhythm, like I was introducing myself. Nothing came back. The next night, I knocked again. Still nothing. Then, 2 nights later, after my usual knocks and the customary thump at 2:37, something new happened. A second thump. Softer, but closer. I froze. I felt it through the floor this time, not the wall. Like something had stepped closer to where I was sitting cross-legged, back against the fridge, eyes bloodshot from sleep deprivation. It was the first time I felt real fear. My limbs went cold. My mind stuttered. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. When I finally did, I stood up slowly and backed away from the wall like it was a wild animal. That night, I slept in the bathtub with the lights on, and the next day, I bought a thermal camera. Don't ask me why. I guess I wanted to see what my eyes were missing. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe it was instinct, but I needed to know. I set it up in the kitchen, aimed straight at the wall of Thuray, and let it run overnight. When I reviewed the footage the next morning, everything looked normal, for a while. Then, at exactly 2:37, the screen lit up with a sudden bloom of heat. A handprint. Just one, clear as day, pressed flat against the wall from the other side. The fingers were long, unnaturally so, and slightly crooked. They'd been broken and reset in the wrong places. The image held for 7 seconds before it faded. I sat there, mouth dry, heart thudding like it wanted to escape through my ribs. There was no way to explain it. No heating pipe could make a pattern like that. And besides, the wall on my side was cool to the touch. Whatever that hand was, it was real, and it was reaching out. I showed the video to a friend, the only one I trusted not to laugh or call a doctor. He watched it in silence, then turned to me with a pale face and a question I hadn't expected. "Have you ever tried to knock back?" I nodded. "I've been doing it for days." He swallowed. "No, I mean after the thump. Right after it. Did you ever knock after it?" I hadn't. It hadn't even occurred to me. That night, I sat in the dark, knees drawn up, thermal cam rolling. When the thump came, I waited half a breath, then knocked once. A pause, then knock knock. 2 knocks. From inside the wall, from under the wall. That's when I realized something. The thump didn't come from the other side. It came from below. My kitchen shared a wall with 3A sure. But what if that was a trick? What if the sound had been rising up, not crossing sideways? The next morning, I did something reckless. I checked the basement blueprints. And there it was. A crawl space, right under apartment 3A, sealed off since the fire, padlocked, forgotten, except it wasn't empty. Because at 237 every night, something remembered how to knock. Something that didn't want to be forgotten. Something that was getting closer. I didn't sleep the night I found the crawl space on the blueprints. Not really. I sat upright in bed, blanket draped over my legs like a curtain I could pull down over reality if it got too loud. But nothing would quiet the storm in my head. Every creak of the building sounded deliberate now. Every car that passed beneath my window seemed like an interruption, a break in some coded rhythm. The air itself had started humming. I kept thinking of the handprint. It wasn't just the shape that disturbed me, though the fingers were wrong in a way you could feel in your spine. But the fact that it faded, like heat escaping from something that shouldn't have been warm to begin with. Like it was made of breath, or flesh, or memory. I waited for sunrise. I needed the illusion of safety, the kind only morning light can provide. The kind that convinces you shadows are just tricks and strange sounds are plumbing, no matter how many nights they've repeated with precision. When the light came, weak and gray through the kitchen window, I threw on my coat and went down to the basement. The building's basement wasn't forbidden exactly, but it wasn't inviting either. You had to unlock a rusting iron door at the end of the first floor hallway, then navigate a concrete stairwell that always smelled faintly of mildew and wet cardboard. I'd only been down there once before when I moved in, to check my storage locker. I hadn't stayed long. The overhead lights buzzed like dying flies and flickered every few seconds, casting shadows that jumped like startled cats. Most of the space was taken up by pipes, breaker panels, and ancient laundry machines no one used anymore. But at the far end, beyond the storage cages, there was another door. This one was different. Metal painted the same institutional gray as the walls, with a rusted padlock hanging from a latch like a dead weight. The crawl space. I approached slowly, footsteps echoing off the floor in a way that made me flinch. The padlock looked old but intact. The latch was sealed tight, the door unmoving. No signs of tampering, no scratches or bent metal. But still something radiated from it. Not sound, not smell. Just a sense. An awareness, like the door wasn't keeping something in. It was keeping something out. I didn't have a key. I knew the super wouldn't give me one even if I asked. He'd probably pretend the crawl space didn't exist or that it was filled with asbestos or rat carcasses, or both. But I wasn't planning to ask. I went back upstairs, searched my closet for the bolt cutters I'd used to remove an old bike lock months ago, and returned to the basement with my heart pounding like a drumline. It took 3 squeezes. The first one barely scratched the steel. The second one made it groan. The third made the padlock snap with a sharp clink that echoed like a gunshot in the stale air. I froze, waiting for a noise, a move, anything. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of building utilities and my own shaky breath. I pulled the latch. The door swung open on screaming hinges. Inside was darkness. Not the kind you get when the lights are off, but the thick, syrupy kind that swallows flashlight beams and feels like it's breathing just out of reach. The crawl space was low, maybe 4 feet high, with old insulation hanging like skin from the ceiling. The floor was concrete, cracked in places and littered with broken bricks and chunks of forgotten debris. I crawled in on hands and knees, one hand holding my flashlight, the other steadying me against a cold wall. The air smelled old. like wet stone and something faintly metallic, like blood dried decades ago. I moved slowly, careful not to brush against anything. It was tighter than I'd thought, and the further I crawled, the less I felt like I was under a modern apartment building and more like I'd slipped sideways into some in-between world. One where time forgot how to function, where things once buried remembered the shape of the shovel. Then I found it. The wall. Not just any wall. The wall. The one my kitchen fridge sat against. It looked different from the others. Smoother, newer. It had been reinforced, and in the center of it, smeared across a patch of discolored plaster, was the faint outline of a handprint. The same size, the same shape fading. I reached out and touched it, and something touched back. It wasn't a full movement, more like a twitch beneath the concrete. A muscle spasm deep within the structure, as if the wall itself had nerves and one of them had just fired. I yanked my hand away so fast I scraped my knuckles against the brick behind me. Blood welled up instantly, a warm sting. The flashlight flickered once, then again, and then the noise came. Not a thump, not this time. A whisper, a voice so faint it might have been inside my own skull. "Let me show you." I scrambled backward, knees cracking against the cement, palms slipping on gravel. My flashlight dropped, rolled, spun uselessly, casting moving shadows along the walls like they were trying to escape too. I don't know how long I crawled. It felt like hours. When I finally burst back into the basement, the door slammed behind me hard enough to knock dust from the ceiling. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe until I was 3 floors up and locked inside my apartment. Only then did I realize I still had blood on my hand, and that the scrape was gone, completely gone, skin smooth, like nothing ever happened. I ran to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My face looked pale, eyes too wide, pupils dilated, but what chilled me most was something I couldn't immediately place. Something off. It wasn't until I blinked that I saw it. My reflection blinked a second too late. Just barely. Just enough. I backed away. From that point forward, things accelerated. Every night brought a new anomaly. Lights flickering without reason. Faucets turning on with water that wasn't cold or hot. Just wrong. Objects moving ever so slightly when I left the room. I started setting up cameras, not just in the kitchen, but everywhere. I needed to know what happened between 2:37 and sunrise, but the footage never helped. Every night, just after the thump, the video would freeze. The timestamps kept running, but the image would hold. Me sleeping or pacing or staring wide-eyed at nothing. And then, an hour later, the footage would resume, and I'd be in a different position. Sometimes it was subtle, shifted blanket, a turned head. Other times, it was drastic. I'd be in the bathroom with the shower running, fully clothed. Or sitting in the hallway, rocking back and forth like a child trying to remember a song that never existed. I started losing time. 10 minutes here, an hour there. My phone showed calls I never made, messages I never sent. Once, I found my calendar filled with repeating appointments. SOVER, they said. Every day at 2:37 am, show her. But I didn't know who her was. Not yet. One morning, I woke with my fridge moved 3 feet to the left. No drag marks, no scuffing. Just neatly repositioned like a giant chess piece on a forgotten board. Behind it, carved into the drywall, was a single word. Beneath. I called my friend again. The one who saw the thermal footage. I didn't want to sound crazy, but I think I did anyway. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "You need to leave," he said. "Not the apartment, the building. Something's trying to replace you." That word, replace. It landed like an axe in the base of my neck. I didn't know what he meant, not fully. But some part of me already understood. There were moments when I caught myself smiling at nothing. Saying words I didn't mean. Responding to thoughts that weren't mine. My own reflection had started to look like a suggestion. Like something was trying it on. I decided to go back into the crawl space. One last time. Not out of bravery, out of desperation. I needed to know what was underneath. What was trying to show me? What had been knocking all this time? I packed a flashlight, a backup light, a portable camera, and a crowbar. I went down at midnight, hoping to have time to explore before 2037. But the moment I opened the crawl space door again, I knew I was already too late, because the handprint was fresh, and this time there were 2. I knew I should have closed the crawl space door and walked away. I should have run back upstairs, packed what I could, and never turned around. But it's hard to run from something that's already inside you. That's how it felt. Like this thing, whatever it was, had threaded itself through my nerves, tethering my thoughts to its rhythm. And now, with those 2 fresh handprints on the wall, long, crooked fingers etched in warmth, I felt it watching, waiting. Not just behind the wall, beneath it. Within it, I crawled in again, slower this time. Every scrape of my knee, every shifting breath, seemed to echo too loudly. My flashlight flicked left to right across the narrow concrete, catching glimmers of dust floating like motes in a submerged world. The air was denser now. Not stale like before, but humid, charged, like something had been breathing just ahead of me, waiting for me to arrive. And there was something new, something I hadn't noticed in the earlier panic. Symbols. Faint, but unmistakable. Drawn in charcoal or soot or something darker. Circles intersecting with jagged lines, etched into the concrete at intervals, always near the base of the walls. They looked meaningless at first, but the more I stared, the more they hurt my head to examine. Like they weren't meant to be understood in daylight logic. Like they were written for something else. Something older. I reached the far wall and sat back on my heels. There they were. The prints. 2 of them. Not side by side but overlapping. One pressed just below the other. The upper one was larger, stretched unnaturally wide like fingers that had forgotten how long fingers should be. I reached for the wall without knowing why. Something about the prints drew me in, like a magnet that worked on memory instead of metal. My palm hovered over the lower one, my breath catching. But before I could touch it, the concrete beneath me shifted. Not a crack or a collapse, but a soft depression, a settling. The kind you feel in a graveyard when the dirt hasn't quite remembered how to hold its shape. I jumped back and nearly dropped the flashlight again. This time, I saw it. The floor in the far corner, just beside the symbols, had a seam. A hairline fracture in the cement curved like a hinge. I crawled toward it and ran my fingers along the edge. It wasn't natural. Someone had built a panel here, long ago, then sealed it as if daring the future to forget. But time hadn't forgotten. And now, neither had I. I wedged the crowbar under the seam and pried. Dust spilled like ancient breath. The edge groaned, resisted, then lifted. Beneath was a cavity, maybe 4 feet deep, just enough for a person to stand in, or lie in. I hesitated, then shined my flashlight inside. What I saw shouldn't have been possible. It was a room. Tiny. Square, perfectly cut into the ground beneath the crawl space like a secret someone had tried to erase. The walls were lined with decayed insulation, but at the far end stood a mirror. Not just any mirror. It looked exactly like the one in my bathroom. Same frame, same smudge near the top left corner. And in the reflection, I saw myself. But I wasn't holding a flashlight. I wasn't kneeling. I was standing upright, expression calm, eyes dark like ink. My mouth didn't move, but my reflection smiled. I recoiled so fast I hit my head on the low ceiling. The pain was sharp, blooming behind my eyes. When I looked back down, the mirror was gone. The cavity was empty. Just concrete. I blinked several times, heart racing, unsure if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. I scrambled out of the crawl space, crowbar forgotten, breath coming in gasps. When I finally reached the stairwell, I locked the basement door behind me and leaned against it, shaking. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit down. I just stood in the middle of my apartment, eyes on every mirror I owned. I covered the bathroom one with a towel, turned the hallway one to face the wall. But still, I felt it. The weight, the watching. I started seeing flashes of movement in reflections, quick, like insects scattering. But always with the same structure, the same posture, the same me. Almost me. I tried staying with friends. 3 nights at my buddy Aaron's place, but 2 nights at my cousin's. But it didn't matter. The thump followed me. Not at 2:37 anymore. Now it came earlier, 2:12, then 1:53. It was counting down. No matter where I slept, I'd wake to find a new symbol drawn somewhere nearby. On the bathroom tile, in condensation on the window, once on the mirror of a car I hadn't driven in weeks. Always the same shape. A circle pierced by a jagged vertical line. And always the handprints followed. First one, then 2, then more. It wasn't just trying to reach through. It was preparing to cross. I returned to the building. I don't know what I thought I'd accomplish. Maybe I hoped that going back would stop the descent. Maybe I believed I could trap whatever it was back where it came from. Or maybe I just needed to know how deep the rabbit hole went. The super was gone. The lobby was empty. The mailboxes had all been pried open, the contents stripped. My apartment door was ajar. Inside, the air felt electric, like lightning had recently passed through. My kitchen looked the same. Fridge humming, cabinets untouched. But every mirror in the place had been uncovered, repositioned, angled. They all faced the same direction, toward the shared wall with 3A. I stepped into the bathroom and stared at my reflection. It stared back. No smile, no delay. But something in the eyes had changed. A stillness, like it had stopped pretending. I said nothing. It said nothing. I turned to leave. It waved. That night, I finally broke into 3A. The door was locked, but not well. A thin piece of metal in the latch gave way after one solid shove with my shoulder. Inside, the air was thick with dust, but something beneath that. A coppery tang like blood half remembered. The unit was small, mirroring mine. Same layout, same walls, but everything was wrong. The kitchen appliances were gone. The windows were sealed shut, and the floor was covered in paper. Hundreds of sheets scattered like fallen leaves. I picked one up. It was another. Blank. But when I held them under the light, faint impressions appeared, like invisible ink reacting to heat. Handprints. Everywhere. Some small, some impossibly large, all reaching upward. The walls weren't much better. Scrawled messages in faded charcoal ran from corner to corner. L. U.
Now the ID.
One message repeated in red cray like a child had written it in a frenzy. I said W.E. I said W.M.E. And above the archway that led to the bathroom, scratched into the drywall with what looked like fingernails, was a final phrase. I didn't go into the bathroom. I couldn't. Not yet. Something told me I wasn't ready, that I had one last piece to find. One final truth before the door could open fully. I turned to leave and saw it. On the floor by the front door, where no papers had landed. A mirror. Small handheld, the kind old women might have carried in purses. Its surface was smudged but intact. I knelt and picked it up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in the reflection, my face split. Not down the middle, not in gore. But like a mask being peeled, my skin shimmered and folded back to reveal another version beneath. Gray-eyed, smiling with black veins pulsing along its throat. It spoke without moving its lips, a voice that came from inside my own ears. You looked too long. Now we see together. I dropped the mirror. It didn't shatter. It breathed. I stumbled out of 3A and didn't lock the door behind me. What was the point? There were no more barriers. The line had blurred. All that remained was the descent. And it wasn't over, because when I returned to my apartment and opened my laptop to document what I'd found, the screen flashed once, then twice, and then a video played. One I never recorded. It showed me sleeping. Peacefully. Then sitting up, walking to the mirror, smiling. And in the reflection, no one followed. I didn't remember walking to the mirror that night. I didn't remember sitting up, or smiling, or staring at my reflection like I was seeing it for the first time. But there I was, on video. Frame by frame, pixel by pixel, a perfect replica of me performing actions I had no memory of. And the worst part wasn't what was in the recording. It was what wasn't. My reflection. Completely gone. A black void where my mirror self should have been. The empty glass reflected everything else. The lamp, the wall, the books on the shelf. But not me. Like the mirror had finally decided I didn't belong anymore. I watched the video loop again and again, trying to catch a flicker, a shadow, any proof that I wasn't losing my mind. But it remained the same every time. Me awake but unaware. Me, entranced, and nothing watching back. It was the final confirmation I didn't want but had secretly feared. Something had taken my place in the reflection. Something that didn't need to mimic anymore. It had learned everything it needed. I had taught it. That day passed in a haze. I covered every mirror in the apartment again, this time with black fabric. I turned off every reflective surface, even the screen of my phone. I unplugged the TV, the monitor, the microwave's chrome door. Anything that could echo back a version of me I didn't trust. I taped newspaper over the windows in case the glass caught my image wrong. By sunset, the apartment looked like a bunker built by a madman. I didn't care. I needed the silence. I needed a place where it couldn't see me. But that night, the dreams started. They didn't feel like dreams, though. They felt like downloads. Images implanted in the back of my skull. The first was of the basement. Not as it looked now, but as it once was. Bright, functional, clean. I saw men in uniforms. Maintenance workers, maybe. Lugging a large mirror through the corridor, sweating and grunting, the glass wrapped in thick canvas. They lowered it into the crawl space carefully, reverently, as if it weren't just a mirror but a tombstone. The next dream was worse. I saw myself again. Not modern-day me, but a younger version. Childhood. Same building, same apartment. I was sitting in the hallway with crayons, drawing circles and lines on the wall. The same symbols from the crawl space. But I didn't know what they meant. I was just copying, mimicking. And standing behind me, almost hidden in the shadows, was a tall, gray figure with a face like melting wax. Its arms unnaturally long. It pointed to the wall, guiding me. I turned, looked up at it, and smiled like it was an old friend. I woke up drenched in sweat, my throat raw from screaming I didn't remember doing. Something had been here before. In my past, in my memory. But I hadn't recognized it until now. Until it had started bleeding into everything. I tried to research the building's history, hoping for a rational explanation. I dug through city records, newspaper archives, local folklore. The fire in Thuray was documented, yes, but it was sparse. No cause listed, just that the tenant disappeared afterward. No legal forwarding address, no next of kin. The article was short, terse, like someone wanted it forgotten. But further back, buried in microfilm reels at the city library, I found something else. A death decades ago. A child, age 6, lived in 3B, my unit, found in the crawlspace beneath 3A. Cause of death unknown. Body discovered with no signs of trauma, but eyes missing. Hollow sockets, bloodless. A single phrase written on the child's forehead in soot. I let her in. The librarian asked if I was okay when I dropped the reel. I lied and said yes. That night, I stopped pretending I could fight it. I let the cameras roll. I sat in the middle of the living room, all lights off, wrapped in a blanket, watching the clock. 237 came, and so did the sound. But it wasn't a thump anymore. It was a scratching. Long, slow, deliberate, like fingernails against metal. It came from under the floor, under me. And then, silence. I waited, breath caught in my chest, every hair on my body standing up like antenna. I didn't move. I didn't blink. And then I felt it. A shift in the room. The temperature didn't change. The shadows didn't grow. But something entered. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. But I knew. It was here, and it wasn't pretending anymore. I turned to the hallway, where I'd covered the mirror with layers of black cloth and duct tape. And I saw the outline of a hand pressing outward. From inside, slowly the fabric bulged as if something was leaning against it from the other side. I should have run. I should have screamed. But instead I stood. My legs moved like they weren't mine. My hands reached forward, peeled the tape, lifted the cloth, and behind the glass, there I was. But not quite. The thing in the mirror wore my face like a suggestion. Its smile was too wide, its eyes too dark. It tilted its head in perfect sync with me, then stopped suddenly, watching me continue the motion alone. It raised a hand. I raised mine. It lowered it halfway, then froze. I kept mine up. That's when I knew. It was no longer mimicking. It was studying. I stepped back and it didn't. I turned away and it stared. I closed my eyes, and I saw it clearer. The dreams returned in rapid fire over the following nights. One after the other, each more vivid than the last. I was inside the crawl space again, only this time it wasn't dark. It was lit with flickering oil lamps along the walls. Symbols etched in blood lined the floor. The mirror at the far end was no longer upright. It was a doorway glowing with faint purple light, humming with a low frequency that made my bones atch. The figure stood in front of it, tall and draped in a fabric that absorbed light. Its face was shifting constantly. Mine, then others, then known, it whispered. She remembers you. She always did. I didn't understand. Who was she? And then I saw her. A girl, standing in the far corner of the crawl space. Pale, eyes wide, arms wrapped around herself. She looked like she hadn't aged in decades. And in her mouth, stitched into her lips, was a key. Not a metaphorical one. A real blackened iron key jammed between her teeth like it had grown there. She reached out to me, trembling. Her other hand was raised as if to shield herself. And on her wrist, I saw it a tattoo, a circle split by a jagged line. I woke up gasping, blood in my mouth. I'd bitten my tongue nearly in half. My pillow was soaked, and written on the wall above my bed, carved in deep, angry gouges, were 4 words. She gave it back. The next morning, I found the key. It was in my freezer, embedded in a block of ice. No explanation. No logic. Just there like it had always been. When I pried it out and held it in my hand, the metal burned. Not in temperature, but in memory. It felt familiar. Too familiar. And I knew, without doubt, that it belonged in the mirror. Not to unlock it, to seal it, because whatever had been clawing its way through had used me as a window. I'd let it learn, let it mimic. Let it map the world through my eyes, my movements, my life. And now it was ready to step through. Unless I locked it out, I returned to the crawl space that night, key in hand. Everything was as I left it. The handprints, the symbols, the mirror. The air was colder, sharper, like stepping into a windless winter. I approached the glass. My reflection was already waiting. This time it didn't smile. It looked tired, hollow. Like a mask worn too long, it opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Just silence, a pleading silence. I raised the key. The reflection raised its hand. I didn't flinch. I pressed the key against the glass. At first, nothing happened. Then the mirror began to hum, then vibrate. Cracks formed along the edges, then at first, then spiraling inward like veins. The reflection screamed, but I couldn't hear it. It pressed its palms against the inside of the mirror, clawing, begging. But I held firm, and then it shattered. Not into glass, into dust. The mirror dissolved. The symbols on the floor evaporated. The cold lifted. And the crawl space was just a crawl space again. I staggered back to my apartment, drained beyond words. I slept for the first time in days. Dreamless, silent, but in the morning, one thing was different. The mirror in my bathroom had returned. Unbroken, untouched. And when I looked into it, my reflection blinked first. The next few days passed in a haze of disbelief, as though my life had been dipped in oil and everything now slipped through my fingers without friction. I wandered the apartment like a ghost, half expecting the shadows to reach for me again, half hoping they would, just so I could know for sure it wasn't over. But nothing happened. No thump at 2237, no whispering mirrors. The walls were silent, the air was still. Even the handprints had faded. It felt like I had severed something. A cord, a link, a thread that had stitched two realities together. And now I was floating alone in the silence, waiting for gravity to decide where I'd fall. I told myself it was done, that the key had worked, that I'd locked whatever that was out of my world for good. But some things don't stay locked. Some things wait. It began with the mirrors again. Not the ones in my apartment. Those stayed covered, untouched. It was the ones in public. Department stores, elevator doors, the windows of passing cars. I'd catch a glimpse of myself and freeze, because in every reflection there was something wrong. Not big, not overt, just wrong. Once it was my smile lingering too long after my mouth had gone still. Another time, my reflection raised its eyebrow when I hadn't. And once, worst of all, I saw myself already looking at me before I turned. These weren't glitches or tricks of the eye. I knew that now. They were bleed-throughs, residual echoes, or worse, remnants. I started to track them. I downloaded every CCTV recording I could access. Public, private, anything with a mirror or a reflection. I compared movements, postures, expressions. I recorded myself for hours and replayed it frame by frame. What I found chilled me. There wasn't just one version of me. There were several, some subtle, some grotesque. One walked with a limp I never had. One blinked vertically. One had no eyes at all. Just blank skin where sockets should have been. They were shadows playing at being me, fragments of something that hadn't fully shattered after all. And then came the messages. They arrived slowly, quietly. A sticky note on my fridge in handwriting that matched mine exactly, but in a style I hadn't used since high school. "She isn't gone. You just looked away." Then a message scrawled in condensation on my bathroom mirror. "We open together. We close alone." I started checking every surface twice, every drawer, every page of every book. And still, I kept finding notes I hadn't written, words that formed as if someone knew exactly what I feared most and how to spell it. Then, one morning, I found the mirror from the crawlspace in my bed. It was lying beside me on the pillow, its frame cold, its glass smeared as something had been pressed against it from the inside. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. I grabbed a blanket and tossed it over the thing, wrapped it tightly, shoved it in the kitchen cabinet, and locked it shut with a belt. That was the first night I slept with the lights on. It was also the night I remembered something I'd tried very hard to forget. When I was 7, I had a twin, a sister. Her name was Ellen. We shared everything. Clothes, birthday cakes, dreams. I hadn't thought about her in years. My parents never mentioned her after the incident. It was like she'd been edited out of our family's history. But she was real. I remembered the way she used to hum to herself when she was drawing, the way she always insisted on sleeping closest to the wall. And I remembered the night she disappeared. It was in this very building, in this same unit. I remembered waking up to her whispering my name from the hallway. But when I got up, she wasn't there. Just her stuffed rabbit on the floor and a trail of small, dark handprints leading toward the bathroom. They never found her. The police searched for weeks. My parents moved not long after. I was told I must have imagined things, that she wandered out and got lost. But now, all these years later, in this very room with these same walls around me, I remembered she had gone into the mirror. And something else had come out. The next day, I did the unthinkable. I unwrapped the mirror. It was silent, inert, like glass should be. But when I touched it, when I let my fingers brush the surface, a pulse ran through the room like a dropped tuning fork. And in the mirror, I didn't see myself. I saw Ellen. Older now, pale thin, eyes too wide, she wasn't blinking. She wasn't breathing. But she was looking straight at me. Behind her, the mirror whirled twisted in slow spirals, colors I couldn't name churning like oil in water. I whispered her name. She didn't move, but her lips parted slightly. "She's almost through," she mouthed. I dropped the mirror. It didn't break. It never does. That night, I did something else I swore I wouldn't. I went back to the crawlspace. It was different now. The air was thicker. The smell of rust and wet stone filled my nose before I even opened the door. As I crawled, I noticed the symbols had changed. No longer just circles and lines. Now they were moving, pulsing slightly as if they were alive, as if they breathed in sync with something deeper. The spot where the mirror had been wasn't empty anymore. It had become a doorway again. But it wasn't just glowing, it was open. And something was waiting. Ellen stood there. Not a reflection, not a memory. Her body stood in front of the doorway, one hand pressed to the frame, the other beckoning me. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I stepped forward, heart in my throat. And as I got closer, I realized this wasn't Ellen. Not entirely. Her eyes were wrong, too dark, too empty. Her movements too smooth, like someone trying to remember how a body worked. She reached for me, fingers trembling. "I'm still here," she whispered. And then, behind her, another figure moved. Sharper, its form shifted constantly. 1 second, it was Ellen again. Then me. Then a man I didn't recognize. It was every face it had ever worn. It didn't walk, it unfolded. And as it approached, Ellen turned. "You need to close the gate," she said, eyes locking onto mine. "Before it chooses you." I didn't ask what that meant. I ran, crawled out of the space like fire chased me, slammed the door shut, and pushed a shelf against it. I didn't look back, not even when I heard footsteps behind the wall. Not even when the mirror in the hallway started to hum again. I just ran to the kitchen, yanked the mirror from the cabinet, and stared into it. It showed nothing. Not Ellen. Not me. Just a hallway made of smoke and shifting light. And a single word carved into the glass from the inside as sewn. The last straw came the following night. I was dreaming. Or maybe I wasn't. I stood in my bedroom, staring into the bathroom mirror, and I could feel my limbs moving, but not by choice. My body was being tested. My walk. My posture. My voice. The thing in the mirror moved just a second ahead of me, guiding me through its choreography. And when I tried to resist, it hissed through the glass, voice layered in hundreds of tones. "You are the door now." I woke with my hands pressed against the mirror, face smudged against it like I'd tried to climb through. My feet were wet. My fingernails blackened, and the mirror, it was bleeding. Just a single drop from the top corner, trailing like a tear. But it was enough. I knew what I had to do. That morning, I packed what I could and made calls to every contractor, demolition crew, or unlicensed psycho with a sledgehammer I could find. I told them to come to destroy the bathroom, the hallway, the crawl space. To tear the whole cursed thing to the ground if needed. No questions asked. Only one agreed. He showed up that night with a truck and 3 workers. I didn't explain, I just pointed. "The mirrors go first," I said. "Then the wall. Then everything else." They worked fast, maybe sensing the urgency in my voice or the way the lights flickered whenever they got too close to the glass. When the first mirror shattered, the room screamed. Not the workers. The room. A sound like a million voices reversing at once. They kept swinging. One by one, the mirrors died. But the wall fought back. As they cracked through the drywall, black dust poured out like ash from a furnace. One of the workers stopped and backed away. "It's not empty," he muttered. "There's something in there." I stepped forward. Inside the wall was another mirror, buried deep behind the plaster, larger than the others, framed in a metal I didn't recognize. Its surface pulsed like a heartbeat. I knew what it was, the original, the source. I took the sledgehammer, and I swung, and again, until there was only dust, glass, and silence. But even now, I can't sleep, because I keep seeing her face. Not in mirrors, not in dreams, but in other people. The woman across from me on the train yesterday, the boy who passed me on the street, the waiter who asked if I wanted cream in my coffee. All with Ellen's eyes, all with my reflection's smile, and every one of them mouthed the same word as they walked away. Soon. Oh, it's been 31 days since I shattered the mirror in the wall. 31 days since the scream stopped, the hum died, and the air in my apartment finally exhaled. I've counted each day the way a prisoner tallies time, itching invisible marks into my mind, measuring not freedom, but the distance between me and whatever still lingers beyond the glass. I thought it was over. I told myself that over and over again, but you don't walk away from something like this. You survive it, and surviving changes the shape of your life in ways you can't undo. Everything is quiet now. The building still stands. The crawl space has been sealed with concrete, the original mirror buried beneath layers of stone and steel. The workers refused to come back after that night. They wouldn't say why. One of them went pale and muttered something about seeing his daughter's face in the dust. Another quit the job entirely, disappeared from the city. I didn't follow up. I didn't want to know what they took with them. But I know what stayed. The reflections don't follow me anymore. Not in mirrors, not in windows. I've begun using them again. Small ones. A bathroom cabinet, a phone screen, the back of a spoon. And for a while, it was fine. My face smiled when I smiled, blinked when I blinked. No time lag, no subtle delay, just me. Until 3 days ago. It was early morning and I was brushing my teeth. I leaned toward the mirror, still half asleep, and noticed something small, almost imperceptible, a drop of moisture on the inside of the glass. Condensation, maybe. Except the mirror wasn't fogged. It was crystal clear. That single droplet sat there like it had fallen through the mirror, not on it. I wiped it away. It came back the next day, and this morning there were 2. I know what this means. The seal is weakening. Maybe it never held in the first place. Maybe all I did was slow it down, delay the inevitable. But now, I'm not sure what's worse, that I might have to face it again or that I might become it. Because something has shifted in me. At first, it was little things. I'd catch myself humming songs I didn't know, smiling at jokes I hadn't heard, responding to strangers who hadn't spoken. Once I woke up standing in the hallway, one hand on the mirror I'd covered months ago. The tape had been peeled back, methodically layer by layer. My fingers were raw. My nails blackened at the tips. I started recording myself again, just in case. Every night, I set the camera pointed toward my bed. For 5 nights, nothing unusual. Just the restless tossing of someone who can't outrun their own shadow. But on the 6th night at exactly 2:37 a.m., the camera went dark for 7 seconds. When the footage returned, I was gone. Then, at 2:44, I reappeared, standing perfectly still in front of the mirror staring, smiling. The worst part, my mouth was moving, slowly, carefully, forming words I didn't say. I analyzed the video frame by frame. I read my own lips. "You are the door now." The same sentence it said before, the same curse. I don't sleep much anymore. Not because I'm afraid of what I'll see, but because I'm afraid of I'll become when I close my eyes. I feel it inside me now. Not like a possession, not like a ghost, like an overlay. A second self etched over my thoughts, drawing new outlines with steady, unshaking hands. And I'm starting to understand. The mirrors were never about entry. They were about mirror learning. About practice. Something out there wants to become us. Not possess, not replace. Become. Reflected so perfectly that the original forgets which side of the glass they were on. And now it's in me. Or I'm in it. I don't know anymore. The final confirmation came last night. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it ring, but something compelled me to answer. A voice spoke. It was mine. "Are you still pretending this is your life?" it asked. "Or do you remember now?" Then silence. And I swear, just before it hung up, I heard breathing, not mine, not human. Just breathing. I destroyed the phone. But it's pointless, I know the truth now. Ellen never disappeared. She was taken. And whatever took her didn't kill her. It wore her. Used her. Let her grow into a shape it could use again. She was the first door. I was the second. But I've been thinking. If a door can open, it can also close. That's why I've returned to the building. I bought it, every square inch. Took out loans, sold what I had, used the last of my inheritance. No one asked why a man would want to purchase a decaying brick husk with a condemned basement and a reputation whispered about by neighbors. They were just happy to hand it over. Now I sit in the apartment that started it all. 3B. The mirrors are uncovered, the crawlspace reopened. The air is heavy again, just the way I remember. And I wait. Tonight will be the last night. One way or another, I will step through, not to escape, not to surrender, but to close it from the other side. That's the only way. If this reaches you, if someone finds this message, this account, this record, remember one thing: mirrors aren't just reflections. They're rehearsals. And sometimes, what you see in them isn't waiting for you to leave. It's waiting for you to forget who walked away first. Because you think you're looking at something. But sometimes you're looking from something. And when that happens, when you finally forget which side you're on, you were never the original. You were always the echo. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.